How are you, Mensa? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be starting something fresh, new. It's a new chapter, or the first chapter in several chapters dealing with slavery in Southern Africa, because I think it's a topic that the vast majority of us as South Africans know little to nothing about. Some of us know that it happened, but that's as far as our knowledge goes. We don't know when it actually happened. We don't know who it actually happened to. And most of us that do know about it think that it only happened in the Cape. Now let me start off by saying that I'm not here to insult anybody, because the internet can get very sensitive. I'm not some language purist, I'm not a cultural warrior, I'm just an average Joe South African who is trying to learn and share what I learn with you guys. Especially if I think that it can help us understand where we come from, and also more importantly, what lessons we can learn from that history and apply maybe in the current dynamics of South Africa. Now, if you asked most South Africans, especially those who were raised on a steady diet of school book Afrikaans or language, where the Afrikaans comes from, they'll probably tell you that it comes from Dutch, or maybe it's a simplified version of Dutch. And yes, there is some truth to that, but it's a very small part of the truth, and we've dealt with that in a previous video. Because what many people won't tell you, or maybe they themselves don't even know, is that Afrikaans was never a settler's language. It was a language that was molded in kitchens and in compounds by the slaves who were stolen from across the Indian Ocean and the African continent. Women who were from Java, men who were from Mozambique, children who were born from sometimes forced unions between these slaves and Khoi workers. These were the people who gave Afrikaans its flavor and its uniqueness, and why it's a language that's only spoken in South Africa. You won't believe what I just saw now. I've seen these otters, or I saw these otters many months ago, swimming down in the river further down in our town, which is not too far from where I am now. But for the first time ever, I've actually seen them swimming here in this lake. It's like a whole family of them, but I think this might have been the two parents or something swimming through here. Crazy. Okay, so quick break. I forgot to tell you guys that this, the content is sourced, or it's drawn from a book called Slavery in South Africa, or Slavery in Southern Africa, written by Elizabeth Eldredge, or edited by Elizabeth Eldredge. And this was like in 1994. Very, very interesting, good book. So yeah, if you're enjoying the story and if you want to check out more, go and find that book. Also, if you are enjoying this video, if you find that this information is very interesting, if you like the way that it's being told, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me to grow this channel, and share this video with someone else. You know, we as South Africans need to know our history. We need to know where we come from. So yeah, do that, but enjoy the rest of the video. And these are the main characters of today's video, these slaves. Between 1652 and 1808, around 63,000 slaves were brought to the Cape. In the early years, most came from India and Indonesia. Later, after some wars, shipping disruptions, the majority came from Mozambique. According to the book, Southern Africa had arguably the most diverse slave population in the world. And that bit of information is very important for where the colored categorization comes from. Slave owners or farmers would deliberately buy slaves from different parts of the world to keep them linguistically divided, to prevent them from unifying or starting a rebellion against their owner. And because the slaves couldn't understand each other, initially, it was easy for slave masters to pin them up against each other, keep them on their toes, pimping each other, if you will. Imagine being a Malagasy woman, forced to work with a Bengali man or a boy from Angola. None of you speaking the same language, but all of you are expected to serve in perfect obedience. But like we always do, people found a way to survive. Creolization wasn't just about language. It was about different cultures coming together and building new ways of life. Now zoom in on the household. Most slaves, slave women, worked inside the home. They were cooks, seamstresses, or wet nurses. They raised the children of these settlers. These women whispered to each other in Creole tongues, mixing their languages while they were mixing spices in the kitchen. They passed down survival skills, customs, and stories. They weren't just laborers, they were also cultural pioneers. And because these women raised both slave children and settler children, their influence actually stretched a lot further than most people realize. Their food, their way of speaking, their lullabies, they helped shape the rhythm of daily life in the Cape. I mean, we still see it today. The kitchen isn't just a place for food. It's like the heart of the home. Now let's talk about the slave hierarchy. Creole-born slaves were the most valuable. Now, Creole here doesn't just mean language. It literally means when children are born out of the union of two very different cultures, languages, or ethnic groups. So these Creole-born slaves were seen as the most valuable for a couple of reasons. They could speak the local language, and they were seen as loyal and stable. But let's not romanticize that kind of classification. The reason that they were loyal was because they had been born into the system of slavery. They had no memory or experience of freedom. Mozambican slaves were considered ideal for hard labor, peaceful, patient, and strong, according to settler accounts. Malays were seen as clever, skilled artisans, but also described as dangerous, or in the slave owner's words, treacherous, because they had no fear, not even for death. They were not afraid to fight back or to take revenge. As a descendant of those Malays, I believe that came from their strong connection to their faith. As Muslims, that we fear nothing but our Creator. The question is, do we still have that today? These stereotypes weren't just observations, they were also used as tools. They shaped how slaves were bought, sold, and even punished. Even the slave origins were politicized. A Creole slave might fetch a 43% higher price. Indian slaves were seen as refined. Malagasy slaves were praised for finding honey. But this had nothing to do with identity. It was about economics, product features, if you will. Anyway, I need to start heading back. And then there were the koi koi. Technically free, but bonded for decades. If a koi koi woman had a child with a slave man, that child could be tied to the household until the age of 25. Some settlers requested legal permission to keep those children for longer, calling them their treasure. By the 1820s, all of these labels, Malay, Mozambican, Indian, were slowly erased. British officials pushed a simplified racial order: white, colored, native. Identities that were once based on origin were substituted for hierarchies based on skin and descent. And that is how people disappear from history. Through simplification, through silence. But the kitchens remember, the compounds remember, the language, even if you strip it bare, still carries the ghosts of those women who stirred pots and told stories. So no, Afrikaans isn't just Dutch. It's the voice of thousands of unnamed women. It echoes the hundreds of slave ports around the world that collided at the Cape. It's also the sound of survival. And when we honor that, we honor them and ourselves. My closing thoughts on this chapter, because there are more chapters coming, is that those of us who have been classified as, or who call ourselves colored, have a much richer heritage than we think. Some of us call ourselves just Malay, others just Khoi or San. But if we understand the diversity of that slave trade in the Cape, Mozambique, Batavia, Angola, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and other West African countries, how sure are we that we are just one thing? The truth is that the overwhelming majority of us are not. Our forefathers are mixed and creolized much more than we think. But does that take anything away from our identity? I think that depends on individual perspective. For me, who we are is determined by the decisions that we make today, not the legacy of our past. But how we choose to perceive that legacy can influence our decisions. Do we see that legacy as weak and as powerless? Or do we see survivors who adapted and learned and fought for better lives? Nothing in this world is promised to us. None of us were born with a certificate saying that any material possessions would be promised to us. Not even land. Many of our forefathers came from lands that they once called home, that they believed was theirs. But today that land, most of us have never seen, and that we know nothing about at all. It's how we choose to live. It's the efforts that we put in. It's the sacrifices that we are willing to make. Our values and the code by which we live our lives. It's those things that determine our worth and also determine what we earn in this life, not just what we claim. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to comment. Talk to me, especially if you feel like this history was new to you, or if your family, like mine, carries the legacy of those kitchens. Catch you in the next video.